So obviously the past year has been extremely challenging, well, for all businesses, but in particular charities. Sort of we know that COVID has left 1 in 10 charities on the verge of bankruptcy, and they've also obviously been hit by a rise in demand, but sort of a fall in income. So how could a charity become more agile and resilient in challenging environments like we've seen with COVID, Alex?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, because certainly from my experience, the key for charities is that, and the number one difficulty is it's the amount of donations has plummeted.
Yeah.
So all those races like the London Marathon, fortunately it was able to go ahead, but that was delayed, which meant that income to charities was postponed. But because of the lockdown, things like cake parties, coffee, Macmillan coffee mornings,
Yeah.
Sponsored races, all of that meant people couldn't do it. They just simply could not do it. And when we could go back into offices, we couldn't do things like, oh, let's share a whole load of food around.
Yeah.
Because of all the sanitizing and cross-contamination that people had to face. So really, it's a vital question for that particular sector. So prior to the COVID pandemic, for example, we were midway through a major project with one of our charity customers. And this would see the rationalization and consolidation of 2 different phone systems into a single cloud solution, as well as all their voice data and internet. And this was also on the back of them having merged with another charity. So the 2 different organizations merging, 2 different sets of infrastructure having to merge, and everything was going. So it's a straightforward project, really, but everything was going swimmingly. And then we had lockdown, which put a complete spanner in the works for everything. However, we came out of lockdown, or the first lockdown, and we, as well as wanting to get the project underway from both parties, we also realised that things had to be radically different. So thankfully, through putting the telephony infrastructure into the cloud, we were able to bring about a high level of resilience for them from a telephony perspective. But at a practical level, they had been hit quite substantially through the loss in income, as we've talked about, because of COVID, and had to make decisions also about how they were going to operate. So as with many charities, their main office estate was in central London, which is expensive.
Yeah.
But also it forced them to think around, what are we going to do around BCP planning? The past 12 months have been incredibly uncertain and unstable, and has forced them to go through this reevaluation. This year, 2021, it's looking slightly more positive, but there is still so much uncertainty. And there is also still the need to think about how people are going to enable remote and home working effectively. Not just because of COVID, but it's for so many organizations to think about their DR planning. So for this particular charity, we started the project again, but we also worked with them to see how we could enable critical members of staff to have the capability for remote working. So what we've essentially done is expanded the project to include unified comms and soft phones that will work from home or from any location, in fact. And we've managed to flex the way that we've approached the project from a management perspective to incorporate that, because we value what our customers want to do, and these are exceptional times, so we take it seriously and want to help them achieve what they need to achieve. In time, they may be using Teams as their UC client and soft phone, but not just yet. So really, I think that's an example of how we can enable resilience. The cloud is definitely proving that it adds resilience and business continuity. and is not.
Yeah.
Sorry, were you going
Yeah.
to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think that, being able to work from home and sort of moving further into the future, maybe more charities will, think, I don't need this added cost of having an office. Like, let's just get rid of it and, work from home indefinitely, essentially, because, it's just another cost that they're having to pay for. And it's great. It's great that the cloud has enabled them to continue to operate, and whilst not being in the office.
Yes, exactly. And it's not just the charity sector that's hit either. It's other sectors are facing exactly the same questions. People who've got estate in major cities where prime estate are now thinking,
I don't need this.
No, exactly.
I don't need it.
Yes, we need an office, but why don't we do it all on a hot desking basis?
Yeah.
People can then have the flexibility of working from home some days, working out of a smaller office in a less expensive location. We can work more than adequately in a remote or hot desking environment. Whereas before it was all about, oh, if I can't see you, how do I know you're being productive? This time around we've been forced.
Yes, yeah.
So.
Well, and I think people are starting to look more at output rather than, the time that you're spent sat at your desk. So.
Yeah. And in this particular charities case, it's also forced them to reevaluate how they conduct business internally, and how much more precious staff are and their resource and availability is. So it's raising questions about, how can we automate processes or automate customer interactions? How can we be more proactive in identifying funding or donation sources? So as with most charities, they've got forms on their website where you can apply for a coffee morning funding pack or registration pack, or you can contact them to say, yeah, I'm running in the London Marathon. I want to raise money for yourselves. But what if we could proactively help them identify somebody who's got a ballot ticket to the London Marathon and doesn't know yet who they're going to raise money for? If we can identify that and enable them to proactively get in touch with that person, that's potentially has a massive bonus for them, because they're suddenly going to tap into what has previously been an untapped source of revenue or of income. And what about internal processes or customer-facing processes? How can they be dealt with more efficiently? What parts of these processes can we automate?
Hello.
Hi, Agile.
Hello.
Yeah, so I was just talking about one of the charities that we've been talking to about being more proactive in identifying donation sources, and also I was just saying about internal processes, how they can be automated to reduce the manual intervention, or if it's a customer query, rather than it being passed from pillar to post, if we simply can read that digital content, again, whether it's web chat, social media, emails, it doesn't really matter. To us, it doesn't matter. If we can identify what that content is about and who it should go to, even if it's 95–90% accurate, then it benefits the customer experience, because they're having their query dealt with far faster. They're less handover points in that process, and it means that people's time, which is the most costly part for any organization, is not being used for mundane, repetitive, and non-value adding areas of work.
Cool. We've just done the last question, Gil. Sorry.
That's right. No.
We've completed it, mate.
Nice.